Hey, welcome into the REVO Church Podcast. I'm Jamie. I'm the host of the podcast. And if you clicked on this video, then you already know that this is spiritual disciplines. For the last 2 months, we have been flowing through spiritual disciplines. We talked about what are spiritual disciplines all the way back in week 1. Then we talked about Bible reading. We talked about Bible studying. We've talked about prayer, fasting, serving, worship, rest. And today, if you haven't seen those videos, if you have sitting here and you're like, spiritual disciplines, this sounds pretty interesting. I'd like to know about a spiritual discipline. Hey, pause this video. It won't hurt my feelings. Go watch the other videos and then come back to this one because today we're actually going to be talking about generosity. And so I'm joined by Mark. Mark is out at the North Campus, him and his wife, Allison. They do a whole lot of things at North Campus. If you go to North, you've met them, you've seen them, you probably know them. Here's some of the stuff they do. They serve in guest services. They are the warm, welcoming faces that come up to you and they talk to you and they try to make your first entrance into the church feel actually comfortable. Mark also has done a whole bunch of repairs at the North Campus. There's been a whole lot of things that we have attempted to fix and he comes in and is like, let me show you the right way to do this. Let me fix this. That way it actually makes sense and it all flows. They have also been on mission trips. They do all kinds of things. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thanks.
Are you excited about it?
Absolutely. It's going to be great.
I'm so excited. So we're talking about generosity today. And there's a verse that I want to read right off the bat to set the stage for generosity. It's this. It's 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7. It's Paul writing, and listen to what Paul says. He says, each one of you should give just as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, because God loves a cheerful giver. Paul tells us that when we are giving, whether it's financially, whether it's with our time, our talent, our treasures, when we are giving, we should give cheerfully. So let me ask you this. We're right at the top here talking about generosity. Why should someone want to give? Like, what benefit does it provide you to give of your time, to give of your money?
Yeah. Hey, thanks for inviting me here, Jamie, and welcome everybody. First of all, generosity is kind of a weird topic to talk about. I mean, we're told to, in the Bible, it says, give in secret, right? And it says, don't boast about your giving. So we're not even supposed to let our right hand know what our left hand is doing, right? It's supposed to be that kind of thing. So it's kind of an uncomfortable topic to talk about publicly in a way, but that doesn't mean we should ignore it either. I mean, Christ didn't ignore it, so we shouldn't ignore it. Oh, and by the way, today, I apologize in advance, folks. You're going to hear a lot about my mom because she is the role model for me, and she's just like the ideal of giving in my mind. So you're going to hear a lot about her. So, hey, Mom, you'll probably be listening too.
Shout out to
there you go.
Shout out to Mrs. Dowdy.
Anyway, back to your question. Why should we give? God, there's so many answers to that. There's so many benefits to it and so many reasons. But first of all, we should give because God says give, right? So part of this is just about pure obedience. But you got to ask, why would God ask us to give? Mm-hmm. I mean, does God need something from us? Does God need money? No, of course not. Does God need our time? God doesn't need any of these things. So why does he ask us to do it? Well, if you believe like I do that God loves you and God is actually working out to make everything the best possible for you, he's on our side, right? He's cheering for us, right? So if you believe that, then he wants us to give because it's going to draw us closer to him. And it's not that giving is a good thing for us. It's a great thing for us, right? It's the best thing for us, or he wouldn't ask it. So giving is something we do because God asks us, but he asks us because it's awesome for us to give.
Yeah,
right?
It's always challenged me. I've heard people say giving, we need to give because God needs our money. God needs this. And it always brings me back to the idea of I think it's Paul talking where God does not dwell in houses made by man. God doesn't need our stuff.
None of it.
He doesn't need us to do it. He's not saying give because if you don't give, the mission of God's not going to happen. God's in control. God's reigning.
Absolutely.
He's saying give because it brings us closer. So talking about giving, was that always a view that you had? Where it was, because you're saying your view was like, hey, God doesn't need it. It's only to draw us closer. It's to bring us closer. Was that always your mindset?
Yeah, when I was 2, I had those intellectual thoughts. No, not at all. I mean, let me tell you a story. When I was growing up, I was taught as a discipline to give 10% of my money. Now, 10% of what's 10% of a 7 or 8-year-old's money? I was given a quarter a week.
Yep.
Okay, 25 cents a week. Now, I was an engineer from a very young age, apparently, because I was actually kind of worried about that. How do I give 1/10 of a quarter? That's 2.5 cents.
Do I start breaking pennies in half?
Start breaking them in half. What do I do? I was actually quite concerned about that. It's kind of funny, but it's silly to think about now, right? Certainly, I wanted to do the right thing, but at that time, I was young. It wasn't about the joy of giving or drawing close to God. It was those are mature things that you build into, but it was really about just being obedient. I was told to do it. I was told it was the right thing, and I wanted to do the right thing. The church certainly didn't need my 2.5 cents, right? That wasn't going to change the way the church operated, but that wasn't the point. And my mom just wanted to instill a habit of giving, a practice, a routine, so that it became like muscle memory, right? You just do it because, well, that's what you've always done.
Yep.
So I grew up giving, yes, but it really wasn't, it was really just about obedience at that point.
Yeah. So your giving was an obedient side of things. I think a lot of people, when they give, they're like, well, I'm giving because God tells me that I'm supposed to give.
Yeah.
Like that paycheck that hit, man, I could buy so many things. Like Starbucks is calling my name, but God's calling me to give. But when we read that verse from Paul in 2 Corinthians, he said that we should be cheerful givers.
Yep.
And the idea of cheerful is not okay, God, I'll give you your money. It's God, I'm so excited to give it to you.
Yep.
So what does that look like? How can we change our mindset from I'm giving just because I'm being obedient to I'm actually being a cheerful giver?
Right. So, cheerful giving, that's the end game, right? That's what you're going for. And it isn't something you develop within yourself. That's something that God provides.
Yep.
You give out of obedience at the beginning, but you develop into this. It's a spiritual exercise. It's like physical exercise. It kind of stinks at first.
Yeah.
It hurts.
It can be
It's
hard.
not comfortable. It can be hard. But most people will tell you when they do exercise and when they get into the habit of it, they actually start to enjoy it. And it's the same thing with giving. There's this cool feedback loop that God has instilled within us where it's completely crazy, but you kind of start getting a kick out of it, and it starts to be fun.
Yeah, I think there's times, I don't know if you've ever experienced this. I've experienced this where you're in a drive-through line and you just ordered, for some reason, it always happens on a Sunday. When you're in the drive-through line, it happens when I'm heading to church. I'm going to Dunkin' Donuts because it's better than Starbucks. Fight me on it. And I'm in the Dunkin' Donuts line and I just ordered my coffee and I go to pick it up and they're like, hey, the car in front of you paid for your coffee.
Yeah.
And you just get like, wow. And so
Just
then
overwhelmed.
you're
right?
like, I'll pay for the person behind me. And it just starts this chain. It's like you said, it's that feedback loop of you experience some kind of kindness. And so you're going to, pay it forward and give. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happens when we're giving to God as well. I think there's a certain feedback loop, like you're saying, where we're giving and we're experiencing these things. We start to experience God a little more. We start to draw a little closer to him. We start to feel his presence a little more, the goodness that he is through our giving. And so I think that I think it all connects. You experience it all the time, especially if you go to a drive-through on a Sunday morning. It will happen to you at some point.
I need to start going to more drive-thrus on Sundays.
Yes, it will happen. But reading through, continuing on in verses in the Bible that talk about giving, I love what Proverbs chapter 3 says. Proverbs 3:9 tells us, honor the Lord with your wealth and from the first fruits of all your crops. He's saying that, Proverbs is wrote by Solomon. Proverbs literally means wisdom. It's wisdom for us today. And he's looking at us and saying, from your wealth, give of the first fruits. What does it mean to give God our first fruits?
Yeah, most of us aren't farmers these days, right?
Yeah, I know how to plant corn. That's about
right.
it.
So this expression "first fruits" is a little bit foreign to us, right? We're just not used to it. But I've done some gardening in my life, and I first of all, guys, I love vine ripened tomatoes. I mean, that first tomato that comes up, I really, really like them. And that first tomato that comes off the vine is the best one. I mean, it's just an awesome thing. It's the one that I value the most. And in some ways, God is telling us, I want the very best.
Yeah.
I want the best thing you have. I don't want you to have it. I want to have it. And that can come off feeling a little bit almost like it's selfish, right? It sounds that way. But listen, we're talking about the King of Kings here.
Yeah, we're talking about God.
We're talking about God. This is the God that loves us so much that he gave up his very best. He gave up his son for us, right? And he did that so that we could spend eternity together. I mean, talk about an awesome gift of giving the actual very best. Why wouldn't I want to honor him with the very best thing that I have? But it's kind of funny to think about it in the reverse. If you guys grow a garden at all and you have tomatoes, most everybody plants too many tomato plants, right?
Every time.
Then that first one's really good, but after a while, they're coming in faster than you can eat them, and they're sitting on the counter, and they're starting to get bruised a little bit, and you might even have to throw some of them away. I hate doing that, but throw some of them away.
Feels like such a waste.
You may not even be able to eat them all. Oh no, here comes God at my house. I really should have gotten him something, and I bet God likes tomatoes too. Good thing I have some left over, right? I've got these rotted old ones that I don't really want left over. Here's the King of Kings at my doorstep.
Yep.
I really wish I had something better to offer him than the leftovers, right? So that's, in some ways, that's how I see it. This first fruits is saving that very best because he's God.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome.
I think about it in the book of Genesis. We actually see this modeled right at the beginning when you have Cain and Abel, and they both gave sacrifices, right? I'm sure we are familiar with the story of Cain and Abel, or at least we're familiar with the ending of the story of Cain killing Abel. But when they gave sacrifices, you had one Abel who, like you said, he gave of the first fruits of his harvest. So he was a farmer. He had the best of the best fruit, and he gave all of that to God. And in Genesis 4, it talks about how his gift was accepted, how it was beautiful in the sight of God. And then you had Cain. Cain, he's a shepherd. He was working, he had animals. And so right off the bat, if it's me, I'm like, I'd rather have the animal over the fruit and veggies, personally. But when he gives his gift, he's not giving the best of the best. What Cain gave was he gave the leftovers. Yeah. He gave the sheep that maybe it only had 3 legs. When it walked, it was always walking in a circle. It was the skinnier of the bit. It was the runt. And you read that passage and it talks about how God accepted Abel's gift of the first fruits, the best. But to Cain, it was rejected because it wasn't.
Detested it, yeah.
Yeah, because it wasn't the first. It wasn't the best. It was his leftovers.
It was a rotten tomato.
It was the rotten tomato that you're trying to pass off as this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And God was looking at Cain like, I'd rather you not have gave me anything than to give me out of your leftovers. You were not needed. And so I think the first fruits, that whole idea of giving your first it's not so much the amount. It's not so much the what, because, Cain gave fruit and veggies, or Abel gave fruit and veggies, and Cain gave a lamb. It's not the what that you're giving. It's the heart behind it and the quality behind it.
Absolutely. Yep.
For Abel, he said, I care about God, so I want him to have the best of what I have. He gets the first, and the first is always the best.
There you go.
Where Cain said, yeah, God's there, but I kind of want that fattened lamb for dinner tonight. I'm going to give him that runt lamb. So I think, the whole idea of first fruits is just that. It's the first. But when we're talking about people, let's say people feel like they don't have the money to give. I know there's been spaces in my life where I'm living paycheck to paycheck. There was a time when I was in college where I had my money so spaced out to where I got paid on Fridays. By Thursday night, I had like 10 cents in my bank account. Friday morning come around, bills are paid, groceries are bought, gas, Starbucks. And by Thursday, I'm back down to 10 cents because we're living paycheck to paycheck. So my question with all of that is maybe you don't have the money to give. Is there other ways you can give?
No, really, God only accepts cash. That's the only
Yeah,
rightful gift.
not even credit cards.
Not a credit, just cash.
No cash out.
That's right. Now, of course, that's silly, right? But here's a test, right? Here's a test to put yourself through. Everybody, listen. If God came and asked you to give everything, I'm talking about everything, not just a little bit of something. Give everything. What is the one thing that you would find most difficult to give? What would you want to hold back, right? That's the thing that you're putting as your God. That's the thing that you're putting, I don't want to give God that. I'm holding that back. Now, for some people, that's their talents. Yeah, they think that they're not good enough. They think that they don't have any talents that are worthy, and therefore they want to hold those back. And I would tell you, give that.
Yeah.
That's the thing that God wants, because it's the thing you're holding back from him, right?
Yeah.
And for some people, it's time. Yeah, they work, they're parents, they have their social life. God, please just don't ask me for any time. I need me time, right?
Yep.
Give that.
I need quiet
Right?
time.
That's the thing you're holding back from God. God wants everything, including your time. But for a lot of people, it is money. I mean, it's, I earned this, I deserve it, and
Yep.
God doesn't need my money anyway, right? I would say give financially first. Make that your first gift. And Jesus talked a lot about money. I mean, it was a pretty popular topic.
It's kind of crazy how much he had to say about
Yeah.
it.
And it's not because, or in my opinion anyway, it's not because money is more important, but that more people struggle with that,
Yeah.
right? So more people can give up their time and stuff, but when you talk about their treasure, man, they don't want to give that. They don't want to give that up.
Fisted.
Now, Paul, a lot of people get this wrong. When Paul, when he writes to Timothy, he doesn't say that money is the root of all evil. He says it's the love of money.
Yep.
It's you putting that ahead of God. You having this other thing that you're worshiping, that love. So it's a heart thing, right? So, but I will tell you that people do mistakenly think that if only I had more money, it'd be easier to give to the church. And that's a great lie. I'm just telling you, that is a lie.
I had a buddy that was working, and he got this big finance job. He's making a good amount of money, and he was telling me like all, the money that he was making, and he was like, but I still need a little more. And I looked at him and I was like, well, at what point do you have enough?
Yeah.
And he just kind of stared at me like, what do you mean? And I was like, at what point, like, you're making enough money you have a house, 2 cars, food, Starbucks, you have the whole, everything that you want. Like, at what point do you have enough?
Yeah.
Because it's not about the money, it's about the heart.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I've got a great story, and this is one I've told many people, so I apologize to those who've already heard it. But when I was little, my dad was tragically taken from our family. He was killed in an accident. So we were poor, and we were really poor. And we used to go grocery shopping once a month at the military commissary, because my dad was military. And I have this memory burned in my mind. They had the old-fashioned cash registers. You punch a button and the numbers pop up like this. And we bought our groceries for the month. You've heard about the
I've never seen.
Way back when I was young. When they totaled it up, it popped up $103 or something. And it caught my eye as a 7-8-year-old. I had never seen that third digit pop up, right? It was 100 and something. Wow, cool. I looked at my mom. Yeah. I looked at my mom, and burned into my memory is the look of genuine fear. I mean, she was frightened. How are we going to make it this month? How are we going to pay the bills? How are we going to do whatever? I don't know what the word. I know she was worried. I know she was concerned. And guess what? We tithed that month or that week. I don't remember a single time where we didn't tithe. My mom did this, right? But and she made sure that I saw it, not like, here, Michael, look what I'm doing, but it was open, right? This is something you do, right? So I saw her do that, and it left this impression on my heart. And she didn't stop there either. She was a give everything person. Yeah. She gave. She was on every women's committee you could imagine. She did volunteer physical therapy. She baked cakes for people. I mean, she did everything. She taught Sunday school, right? She was just always giving, 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 and giving. So fast forward a bunch of years into my life, right? I'm living the life, man. I have got a successful career.
Yeah.
I've graduated college, plenty of food in the fridge. But to match that, I had a mortgage.
Yep.
I had a car payment. A few years later, I had orthodontics bills for the kids and tuition to pay. There's never enough money, right?
Yep.
If it's never the right time, you will never have enough money, right? You give because all the digits change, right? You go from 3 digits income to 4-digit income to 5-digit income. I don't know, maybe a 6-digit income
The
for some
bills
people.
just continue to increase.
They just go up with it, right?
Yep.
So it doesn't get easier to give. You give out of your heart, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, I think.
There's never going to be money left over.
Yeah, you're never going to have that opportunity of like, all right, the end of the month, if there's money left over, I'll give it to God. I can promise you that if that's your mindset on giving, Satan's going to make sure there's never money left over.
That's right.
He's going to always keep you in the mindset of if there's some left over.
Yeah.
And I know for myself, giving, I have been in 2 different spheres of giving. There was one side of my life where I was the guy that said, I will give when there's money left over. Where if at the end, right before I got paid, if there was money left over, I would tithe that, I would give that to the church. And then I've been on the side where I am now, where as soon as the paycheck hits, before we even look at our bills, we're saying, all right, we're giving this part to God because God blessed us with this money.
Yeah.
And at least from my experience, from me and Casey's experience, what I can say is every time that we have taken what God has given us and we've immediately turned and gave it back to God, we've never had any kind of money problems. We've been able to pay our bills. We've been able to have groceries.
It's crazy.
We've been able to have gas to get to our jobs. But the moment we weren't giving, it's almost like everything started crumpling around us. And so it sounds so cliche. It sounds so just opposite of everything we know, but it's almost like we give, and that's when we're trusting, saying, God, we don't have it. We don't have the money, but we're giving, and we're trusting that you will take care of it.
Yeah.
That you will take our gift because we love you. We care about you. We want you to be glorified, and we're trusting that you'll take that you'll honor that, and that in our giving that you'll take care of our finance.
That's right.
You'll take care of our struggles, our fears.
God says that you need food.
Yep.
And you need housing. You need these things. God knows that.
Yeah.
He's happy to give those things to you.
Yeah, he's not. It's not a surprise to him.
Yeah.
It's not like he's like, oh, wait a minute, y'all.
Oh, wait a minute, you needed the money.
You need house. You need to live under a roof, and y'all need to eat. What? No, he knows that.
Yeah.
He says it all over.
Yeah.
We see it all over from the Israelites when they're wandering in the desert. He knew they needed food, and every morning they'd wake up and he'd provide food for them.
It was there.
It was there. He knew that they needed shelter, and so he provided a way for them to have shelter. We read about how we're to pray, and the Lord's Prayer says, give us today our daily bread. He knows that we need things daily to survive. And so it's not so much he doesn't know. It's that it's a way we can show how much we are trusting
and he
in
doesn't
his promise.
And he doesn't give begrudgingly.
No.
He gets great joy out of giving.
Oh,
He does, because he's given us that same feeling of you give, you feel great joy. I mean, maybe not the first time you give, right? Sometimes you have to get through that exercise period where the exercise is painful, but then it floods you. It just floods you.
Giving, though there is benefit, though it is joy, it's still a discipline.
Yeah.
And with every discipline, there's hard work. It takes time. It takes effort. Yeah. It'll take intentionality, because you don't just wake up and say, all right, today I'm going to give God some of my money. Today, that time that I was like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to give that to God instead and go see what he needs, or not what he doesn't need it, but how I can better serve and glorify him in it. We don't just wake up saying that.
There you go.
So as we're closing off this episode, I'm sure there's people that are listening to this that have thought about giving, have thought about being generous, and maybe they're just on the fence about it. Maybe they have at times dipped their toe in the water of saying, I'm going to give. Maybe they've gave, but it's always out of obedience and never out of cheerfulness. Is there any tips that you would give them, or any encouragement you would say to maybe start giving, to start trusting God in that area?
Well, I mean, other than just do it, it's a pretty simple exercise.
Mm.
It isn't that hard to give, honestly. You just the physical act of giving
Yeah.
isn't the tough thing. It's changing your heart. It's a recognizing that we worship a phenomenal God who loves us so much, and yeah, He's asking us to give not to harm us.
Yeah.
He's asked to give because it is wonderful for us, and you trust Him and examine your heart. Try to figure out why it's difficult for you,
Yeah.
and then have the faith and trust God and watch Him go, man.
That's good. I think, yeah, it's not hard to give.
Yeah.
It's not hard to, put some money in or to sign up to serve or whatever your generosity and giving looks like. It's not hard to do.
I will tell you, it's addictive,
Mm,
right? When you start giving and you start experiencing that joy,
yeah,
oh man, you just want to do it again,
that's
and you
good.
want to do it again, and you want to do more of it.
That's
So,
good. The part is just changing your heart behind it, and I think that's so good.
definitely a hard thing.
Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast. This
Hey,
has
it's
been
great.
the REVO Church Podcast. This has been episode 9 of Spiritual Disciplines, talking about giving. We'll see you next time.